And I'm waiting for my George Smith, my good friend George Smith, or great friend George Smith, to log on. In the meantime, we have him on the speakerphone. Say hello to everyone, okay, George?
And good morning, Facebook family and friends.
Well, so today we're going to get into episode 3: why the telephone, should be our friend, and how to get people in the facility without giving out prices. And George, you've been through my training before. How does it work when you're doing it correctly?
It works great, but when you don't, you pay the penalties.
Yeah, well, I think we talked about it last week. It's like $10 a phone call. Every time you get a phone call, if you don't get them in and you don't make the sale when you get them in and take them off the market, it costs you $10. Now, what a lot of people don't understand, George, is a lot of people, they want to use, oh, here comes George now. Yay. Let me click them on. There you are, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning. So what I was talking about, it costs $10 every time you get somebody in, or to get somebody to make the phone call, excuse me. And then if you don't get them in, you just wasted $10. Of course, when we get them in, we want to make the sale. We want to take them off the market. The other thing is about the telephone is a lot of people don't know is, you're super busy, you're waiting on people, and the tendency is just to let it go to voicemail. The challenge with that is 55% of all people that, if it goes to voicemail, are not going to call you back, and they're not going to leave a message. They're just going to go somewhere else. So what I had to do is I had to learn how to put on different hats and how to shift from one mode to the other, which I was able to do because a lot of times when you're waiting on somebody, they'll go, "Aren't you going to answer the phone?" And so I just said, "Excuse me for a second. We're extremely busy." See, we're extremely busy, George. We're always extremely busy. Why would I always make that type of statement, George? You have any ideas?
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
Why would I always want to say we're extremely busy?
Just to let the customer know, people want to buy from a store that is very busy versus a store that's not at all, but time is important.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. And people are like, herds. They want to go where everybody else is going because they feel there's safety in numbers. And that's what I found out a long time ago. And so I would break off the answer to the telephone, but I was able to get all the acquired information that I needed to call that person back, because I'm not going to spend 3 or 4 minutes on the phone with them, because I got to get back to the person, the person that's in front of me. And so a lot of times, if you own a facility, a rep will call you or something like that. You just got to tell them, "Hey man, let me call you back as soon as I can," and then call them back. Now, we were talking about, having a good working relationship with our credit managers, right, George?
Yes.
And so if they call you, you always want to call them back and don't shine them on. And listen, be open and honest with them. I was sharing with George, sometimes I forgot to put the invoice on my calendar, for whatever reason, you start to go do something, somebody comes in, you come back, you forget where you're at. But I would always put the invoices on the calendar. That way I could always take advantage of the deepest discounts. So I always had a good relationship with my credit managers. Anyway, let's get back to the telephone. So George, this is episode 3. Have you been able to kind of hone in your telephone skills since we started?
More and more, more and more, refreshing all the stuff that we've gone through training for, and the littlest things that you forget that you apply, and you start getting the customer in the door without giving that price.
Right. And so why do we not want to give out the price, George? What are your thoughts on that? And I'll share my thoughts.
Well, because all things being equal, the customer doesn't know it's equal and doesn't know your facility, doesn't know the differences between shop A and shop B. All they want is that cheapest price, or they're calling around by cheapest price, and sometimes it's not even necessarily price. They just want a price to get to get an idea. But the main
Right.
thing is we don't even have a shot looking at them, and the fact is there's no money exchanged over the phone. It's done in person, and you're also missing the opportunity to upsell more stuff as well.
I'm glad you added that upsell thing because a lot of people would say, well, I give out prices and I take money over the phone. Well, and that's good. You want to take them off the market. However, when they get there, do you know how to upsell?
Yeah,
See,
that's what.
without, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what you got to do is get out of the chair and go out to the car.
Yeah, gotta
Gotta.
go out to their automobile. That's the acronym for gotta. But see, when we're walking out to their car, we're not just going to look at what they say they want. We're looking for, cues and things like that so we can actually upsell. I remember one time a guy had a brand new, I can't remember the car, but I remember it was a beautiful blue. And I mean, this car was brand new. It was gorgeous. And he was there and he put up his little, what, I don't know, window shade to protect his dash. And I asked him about that. You know, why are you using that? Well, I don't want to get in a hot car and I don't want to crack my dash. George, what cues when I asked the question, well, I don't want to get in a hot car and I don't want to crack our dash. What did that just what options does that open up to your mind, George?
First is remote start, so I can cool the car down. You don't get in that hot car. Second is window treatment, uh, especially the windshield, that will help you prevent that dash from fading and cracking.
Exactly. Uh, Also, we had a beautiful brand new paint job. What does that open up for, George?
Paint protection, ceramic coating, additional sales. So it's important.
Right. And see, what I found out, George, when I gave out a cheap price, I just classified myself as being cheap.
Okay,
And I didn't want to be cheap. Our reputation was the most expensive but worth it. Well, Dell, how did you build that reputation? Under promise, over deliver.
absolutely.
Under promise, over deliver. So, whenever my technicians, we talked about this a little bit, I always got my technicians involved. I wanted to introduce them, to my client, and I'd always say two things, and we talked about this before, George. I say, well, this is Steve. Steve's going to be the one. We want to make sure everybody's on the same page. Steve, say hi to George. George, this is Steve. George has got this beautiful, brand new 2019 Honda Accord outside that he just got, and we've been talking about a few options, and I wanted to get your input because you're going to be the one that's doing it. Isn't that right, George?
Yes.
So that question or that statement followed with the question. Now, never make a statement without following with the question. The only reason to make a statement is to prepare the way for the question. So when I said George has got this brand new, beautiful 2019 Honda Accord, and you're going to be the one doing it, Steve, isn't that right? And when George said yes, subconsciously, he just agreed that we were going to be doing the job. Now, listen, some people are going to catch you and they're going to say, I didn't say we were going to do it yet. Well, in selling, another selling law is whenever you get in trouble, ask a question. So my question would be, can we focus on that word yet? Because you're going to make it hard on me, aren't you, George? I mean,
Yes.
I'm gonna have to overturn, every rock to make sure you're totally satisfied. Is that right?
Yes.
See, the power of him saying yes is if you can get him to say yes enough, then it makes it difficult for him to say no. Is that right, George?
Yeah. Yes.
And I'm jacking with you, aren't I, George?
Yep.
And see, we could keep going on and on, couldn't we?
Yes, we could.
And so here's the thing, because it builds a positive experience. It builds up what we call yes momentum. And the more yeses we get, I'm going to say it again, the more chances we have of making the sale. You see, because we're confident in what we do. We know what we're going to do. There's no, I'm not sure. Well, if I had my truck over there, you're saying, to me, means no, can't do it. I can't tell you how many times somebody would come in and I'd ask them, have you been anywhere else? They say, yes. Why didn't you buy? See, did you see anything that you like? Why didn't you buy? See, I'm not afraid to ask that question. And a lot of times, man, they'll tell you why they didn't buy. And it was, I mean, so you don't want to do that. You don't want to do the same thing the other facility did, the other store did. So let's keep going, George. So, George, you take over for a couple of minutes. I need to wet my whistle.
So getting them to say yes is just asking a bunch of questions. So if you get into trouble, the thing is to stop back for a second, just ask another question. But getting them in off the phone is definitely a technique, and you just gotta be firm. They're gonna try to drill you and ask you and get you to give them a price, and you just keep on asking more questions, and also compliment their car. Talk
Mm-hmm.
about their car, ask them about their previous car, and ask them how they found out about you, or what have we done a previous car for you. There's a lot of information, questions, and techniques to ask, and you're the professional. You're really there to help them, and like we talked about before, previous, Benjamin's calling. How are you answering the phone to
Benjamin
Benjamin?
Franklin. Yeah,
Benjamin Franklin's calling. So
that's the $100 bill.
yeah, it's very important to your first impression on the phone is right there.
So George, back to I want to go back to that question. How'd you found out about us? I want to teach everybody how to load up that question. And what I mean by that is I'm going to give them two choices. It's called the power of two. And we're going to demonstrate the power of two in a few moments. But what I'd like to do is, how'd you find out about it? Was it one of our many 5-star reviews, or did a friend invite you in or tell you about us? So I'll give you an example of the selling law. Never give them a choice between doing and not doing. Always give them a choice between doing it this way or doing it that way. And when we demonstrate our new game that we have coming out pretty soon, we're going to teach you, we're going to go over how to get the yes, and then have them how to utilize the power of two. Now, Del, what does the cards have to do with selling? Well, number one, it's not the cards that I want you to learn. It's the technique. It's the selling laws. And when you can play this game and you got it down, no matter what they say, and you're going to see in a moment, it's not going to get me all upset. I'm not going to start arguing with the person. See, arguments when I had my shop, George, I'd win the argument, but you know what? I never made the sale. It felt good, but then they went somewhere else and bought because I argued with them, and then that's not our goal. The customer
Absolutely.
the customer is always right, and you might hate to say that. Well, this guy's wrong. Listen, let them air out what they gotta say, follow it up with a question, and move forward. That's how we do it. Isn't that right, George?
Yes. Keep
so
asking
anyway,
questions, but listen.
so so I'm going to talk about a few selling laws on the telephone. Number one, always answer telephone with a smile on your face. Okay, be happy. Don't be cussing. Be happy. Number two, we want to get their name as soon as possible. Use their name as much as possible. Number three, we want to find out what type of vehicle they have, and we want to talk about that vehicle. In the acronym SEAMINGS, of course, the S is for smiling, the I is for show interest in what they have. Because if you're not interested in what they have, they're not going to be interested in what you have. And just like when they come in, I always took notes, George. Last week, we talked about your 2019 Honda Accord black, didn't we?
Yes.
If I scan my desk, everybody, right now, you would see that I do not have that note. But I wrote it down last week, and now it's inscribed in me. So if I would have said, George, you called last Monday, about 6:45, and we talked about your 2019 black Honda Accord. Of course, you had a 2004 before, didn't you?
Yes.
See, everybody, how I'm getting the S's? And George, am I quoting exactly what you told me?
Yes.
See, the difference between an amateur and a professional is amateurs don't get paid. Professionals get paid. Of course, the better you are, the more you're going to make, aren't you, George?
Yes.
And I'm jacking with them again, aren't I?
Yes.
See, and these are the things. And this is a learned technique. Now, you got to be careful doing this, because if I keep saying, okay, 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 right, 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 they're going to pick up on it as a trained experience. So in the selling card game, we have some rules. Every time, you get a little packet, by the way, you get, these are Dell Bucks. They're $1 million Dell Bucks. Okay. Every time you get a yes answer, you get $1 million Dell Bucks. Of course, if George busts me saying the same thing twice, I got to give him $1 million Dell Bucks. And of course, at the end of the game, he gets to lead the conversation to direct me to the card he wants me to go. And then I get the chance. So whoever has the most Dell Bucks at the end of the game after 2 rounds, unless there's a tie, we go, round 3 and 4. But we always got to be thinking about what we say before we say. How is this question going to come across to the individual that I'm asking the question to? And see, if we just say things like, I can't tell you how many times I shot myself in the foot, George. Somebody wanted something. I go, well, that's not a good thing. And then you go measure out their truck, or you do whatever, their trunk, whatever. And then, you look at it and go, actually, that would have been a better thing for them. But I just shot myself in the foot. We don't want to backtrack. So, George, close your eyes, and I'm going to show everybody the card, and hopefully they could see it. These virtual things, they kind of. So that's what I want to lead them to. So go ahead and open your eyes, George. Now,
Okay.
remember, the goal of this is to get as many yeses as possible and to lead him in a direction that I want to go without getting him upset or argue with him. You see, we never want to argue or fight. We always want to roll with the punch. That's what I was taught 50 years ago, George. Roll with the punch. Mm-hmm. So anyway, George, isn't it true in a deck of cards there's 52 of them?
Yes.
Okay, boom. And George, in that deck of cards, isn't there 2 different colors?
Yes.
And those 2 colors would be?
Red and black.
Red and black. Now, everybody, if you say it, they doubt it. If they say they believe it's true, all I got to do is get them to say it. And George just said red and black, didn't you, George?
Yes.
Now, between those 2, the red and black, remember, we never give them a choice between doing and not doing. We always give them a choice between doing it this way or doing it that way. That's the selling law. Between the red and black, can you choose one of these for me, George? Red or black?
Black.
Fantastic. Of course, if we eliminate that, George, aren't we left with red?
Yes.
Now, I didn't argue with them, but whoever asks the questions leads the conversation. Whoever asks the questions leads the conversation. Now, in the reds, we have 2 different suits. Is that correct, George?
Yes.
And in those 2 suits, we have hearts and diamonds. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Can you name one of these suits for me, George? Either hearts or diamonds?
Hearts.
Fantastic. And then, of course, we take that away. Aren't we left with the diamonds?
Yes.
See, I just repeated, aren't we, again? And if he would have caught me, he could have grabbed $100,000 Dell Bucks from me, but he didn't, did you, George?
No.
And see, in selling, I want to go for yes and no's, and we'll talk about the no's later on. So Now we're in the diamonds and we have face cards and number cards, don't we, George?
Yes.
And can you name one of those groups for me, please? Either face cards or number cards, George.
Face cards.
Fantastic. Now, to simplify the process, are you okay with me, breaking up two groups so we could save some time?
Sure.
Now, I got a Jack Queen and a King Ace of Diamonds. Can you choose one of those groups for me, please, George? The Jack Queen or the King Ace?
King Ace.
Fantastic. Now, between the King and the Ace, can you choose one of those for me, please? The King or Ace of Diamonds? Say that again.
Ace.
Ace of Diamonds, is that what you want?
Yes.
That's the card. So I gained 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, $9 million. I got $9 million. And if he would have caught me using the same one twice, I would only had 8. And then of course, if he went through the questioning and I didn't catch him, you see, I want you to learn how to selling is nothing more than asking the right questions with focused listening. And see, George didn't focus in, but I didn't really share the rules with him, so it really wasn't his fault because he wasn't focused on what I was saying. And see, when you got a client in front of you or you got somebody on the telephone, you need to be focused on what they got to say. Now, Dell, if I got a store full of people, how am I going to do this? You're going to have to get them. You're going to have to get their name. You're going to have to get their phone number, their vehicle type. You're going to have to be excited. And you're going to have to do this under a minute. And then what you do is you ask them, listen, I got 10 eyeballs looking at me. Is it possible I could call you back at 2 o'clock or is 4 o'clock better for you? See, I'm
Power
always
two.
the power two. I'm always going to go back to the power two, just like the cards. See, when George chose hearts or he chose the black cards, it didn't upset me. I just said, well, we take that one away. What are we left with? And then he said it. Or I might have said, hey, we take that away. Aren't we left with this? See, we want to use the we as much as possible because that way the client feels like we're on the same team. Is that right, George?
What you want.
Exactly. So I don't want to get upset. So this card we'll be introducing in a few weeks. I'm working on it, different variations. Listen, I want you to be better than me. But the only way you're going to get better than me is you're going to have to practice like I do, and you're going to have to practice more than what I could do. So, George, what are your takeaways this morning, sir?
Just be enthusiastic on the phone. Be ready to answer the phone and ask a bunch of questions. And
ask the right questions.
Ask the right questions and listen to what they have and try to lead them to that consultation without giving them a price. But also, when you do get them to the store, you got to go out to their car. Got to ask some more questions. You also need to observe their vehicle and look for upgrades and opportunities that you can add to your sale.
So I'm going to go through your 2019. It's black. It's outside, right? And I'm walking outside and go, man, black is such a beautiful color, isn't it, George?
Oh, it gets so dirty so fast, though. I wish I wouldn't have bought it.
Well, hey, get one of those stickers where you can go through the car wash, for free anytime you want. That might work for you, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But
just gets so dirty.
So
wash.
So why did you choose black in the first place, George?
Honestly, I was being dumb that day. I shouldn't have, but I did. I did it again.
Well, let me ask you this: when it's clean, is there anything that looks more prettier than that black card, George?
No.
And let me ask you this: because you're concerned about how it looks, you mentioned the dirt. If I had some options to keep that car, not clean, but to make sure you didn't pick up any road rashes or dings or anything like that. And if I could do so within your budget, would there be anything holding you back from exploring that option, George?
No.
Now, George, I recognize you have that protection on your window, that foil. What do they call that, George?
Sunscreen.
sunscreen on your window. George, why do you take the time to put that on your car?
Well, just the car gets so hot inside, and then when I go to grab the steering wheel, it's really warm too. So I'm just trying to, keep it cooler.
Beside yourself, is there anybody else that drives that car, George?
My wife every once in a while.
hmm Does she know you're here?
No.
so, so for $50, I'll make sure she doesn't find out. Okay, George.
Okay.
Now, the reason why everybody I asked about his wife knowing is because I don't want to get hit with later on. Well, I got to check with my wife. Now, he might try and do it, but I'm going to load up the questions to prevent that from happening. So, for example, George, if I could come up with the perfect solution where you got in that car, and I know your wife doesn't know you're here, but George, has she ever gotten a car with, either shorts on or a skirt on and it burnt her legs?
Yes, it has.
And you heard about it, didn't you?
I did.
So we can eliminate that. That'd be worth all the money in the world, wouldn't it, George?
I think she'd like it. She'd approve it.
Yes, you'd approve it. I heard the saying, you probably heard it, and it might be overused. It's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. Would you agree with that, George?
Yes.
So, see, I'm leading the conversation by asking questions. I'm going for as many yeses as possible. But my goal is not to make it obvious, but right now I am to prove a point. Does that make sense, George?
Yes.
So back to the car. So we got a hot steering wheel. We got hot seats. We want to protect the dash. Is that correct, George?
Yes.
And then, of course, you don't like the car being dirty, but one thing for sure, we don't want road dash. Is that correct?
That'd be nice.
So when you called basically to have your windows treated. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm going to get the
Well,
windows tinted.
was that for privacy or was that for to make your black car even look better, George?
Both.
Both. And if we can get rid of some of the heat at the same time, that would be a triple bonus, wouldn't it?
Yes, so much.
So those out there listening, what I did is I am going and looking at his vehicle. I'm looking at the paint. I'm complimenting on him. He's sharing things that concerned him about his paint. It's dirty. Wish he wouldn't have got it. We talked about road rash because, he's always concerned about the way the vehicle looks. I mean, I think black cars are super beautiful. I love red cars too. But if you're going to get it, if you're if you're driving down the road and you got a red car and there's a black or a white car and you get hit with a radar detector thing, chances are they're going to pick you over everyone else with red. That's what I found out. By the way, George, in your last Accord, if you could have did something in your 2000 Accord to make it better, what would it be that you would have done?
Did the paint protection long time
Mm-hmm.
ago when it was brand new.
Mm-hmm. Because let me ask you this, George. Obviously, you probably took some hits on the paint. Is that's why you're telling me what you're telling me?
Yes. And I was at the dealership trading it in, you mean?
Yeah. Oh, you took a depreciation hit then, didn't you?
Yeah.
Basically, about how much money was that, George? That depreciation hit?
Oh, it's probably about $1,200.
hmm And if we can get your car protected, so you don't lose that 1,200 again, for say maybe a fraction of the amount, that would that motivate you to move forward? I mean, right away. I mean, would you have to check with anybody to protect your investment?
I'd consider it, yes.
Okay, that's fair. Come on inside and let me show you some options.
Perfect.
So, everybody, this is how I did it. This is what made us the most expensive but worth it. This is how we upsell. Now, sometimes they won't do everything that you think they should do right then. But whenever they dropped off the vehicle after they got over the sticker shock, let me explain my type of sticker shock. I might spend a lot of money in one day, and I just go, I'm not going to spend any more money this day. But the next day, I'm over it. And so when they come back, you go, George, you shared with me on your 2004 Honda that you wished you would have did it. Are you still hesitant about doing it, or can we move forward? I mean, isn't it true that the hardest part about dropping off a car to get worked on is dropping it off?
Yes.
And based on that, should we just go ahead and take care of everything now so you don't have to go through that hassle again?
How much money are we talking?
Oh, that's the best part. Come on, let's go figure it out.
And that's where you can also go inside, and I utilize long-term financing, so 6 months or 12 months as your backup.
Mm-hmm.
So these are all skills that Dell has taught me, that, when you're out to the car looking for upsells, talking to them about them, complimenting them, getting them to say the yeses and ask the questions. And then when you walk back inside, you might list out 4 or 5 options. Sometimes you're going to land them all. Sometimes you're going to land the one they came in for. Sometimes you're going to get the extra. But use your financing tools that you have, might lead to more sales, but also you've also let the customer know options that they can do in the future. They come back.
And we want them to come back. We want them to refer our friends. We want them to give us 5-star reviews. We want all these things, and we'll get into how to get 5-star reviews. And I have a process. I have a client that he had just under 80. That was 3 years ago. Now he has over 4,000 5-star reviews. And it's a process. But we have to be able to build rapport with our clients. We have to make them feel at ease. And then we have to be open and honest with them. And we'll talk about different techniques. George, for example, I'll give you a quick one and then we got to go. George, with your black paint job on your brand new Accord that you just invested in, I have some concerns. Do you want me to share those concerns with you, or do you want me to keep them to myself? George, what technique did I just use?
Power of two,
Mm-hmm.
but also voiced your concerns and addressed it. And most people
Exactly.
are going to say, please tell me about it. What are you talking about?
In your 2004, George, when you walked around it, I mean, was that dent or whatever you had on it, was it screaming out at you every time you walked by?
You see it every time.
It sucked, didn't it?
Yes, it does.
And there was another yes, wasn't there?
Yes.
And I mean, I'm getting rich, aren't I? Anyway, I want to thank everybody that viewed this. Hey, we got a contest. If you want to spend an hour with me one-on-one, all you got to do is share this link with 3 people, or I'm sorry, you tag 3 people. You share the link. That's another way. You email me at DELHELPUS. That's DellHelpUs@gmail.com. Give me your information. If you have any questions, write me. I will get back to you. If you're following us on YouTube, subscribe and hit the little ring the bell thing, which I don't have on there yet, but I'm working on it. But the best thing to do is reach out to me and listen. You can text me at 559-259-2932. That's 559-259-2932. If you run into a situation, you got a problem, I will get back to you as soon as I can. But please understand, the reason why I don't take phone calls, I get so many spamaramas trying to call me all the time, and it's what's the word I want to say? It's annoying.
Frustrating.
Yeah. Anyway, I want to thank my good friend or great friend George for joining us. He owns Mobile Works Tent Works of Santa Maria, California. George, thank you so much. I so appreciate you. And remember,
thank you for teaching us today.
Well, remember, we don't got to go to work. We get to go to work, and somebody's going to pay.
Correct.
Have a great day, everyone. Be blessed.
Bye-bye.